So you had the advent of the solid body guitar, which solved a lot of problems in terms of feedback, whereas the big hollow body guitars really, since they were just a hollow piece of wood, they tended to resonate, and when the volume was sent back from the amp, it just created a feedback loop and everything would just sort of go crazy. So Fender comes out with the Telecaster and the Stratocaster, and the solid body guitar sort of takes off. But also, Gibson being a more traditional manufacturer, they come out with the Les Paul, which is more based on sort of a violin shape, a more kind of old world style kind of guitar, but forward thinking in that it was a solid body with eventually with humbuckers and stuff like that. But so by 1958, I believe, 57, they came up with the idea that you could take the idea of a solid body guitar through here, a solid piece of wood, but have it hollow on the sides, so what you have is basically a semi-solid guitar. You set the neck into the wood just like a Gibson Les Paul is, but what you have is the top and sides are put over it to where it's hollow here, solid here, which sort of gives you the kind of combination of both. Again, doing this, they created a whole different sound, like a Les Paul, but a little deeper, a little mellower, a little fatter.
In the very back is where we press the veneer. We take a bunch of different sheets of veneer, and they press them in a press, which makes the contour of the belly and of the guitar.
But you see the arch sticking up of the wood, because the guitars are arch tops. This, he makes these pieces, there's 3 plies, and he puts them in that press there that's heated. And it's got the mold in it. You can see the mold. There's 2 sets of them, one on top, one on, or there's 1 set, one on top, one on bottom. And that molds that in there, heat and moisture. What I always thought was that they cut them out and then they arched them. What blew me away is to come here and see them make a square piece of wood, put the arch in it, then cut them out. Which just furthers the whole deal of they're made by hand. I mean, and I always laugh at the pull handles. You see that thing's been modified so many times. They'll end up cutting those sheets into strips. And it'll take 2 strips to make 1 rim for a guitar. And they put them in the jigs.
And then they assemble them in the body line. They put the binding on in the back there, and then it gets all prepared until it gets to neck fit, where the necks that neckline makes get fit onto the bodies. Once the bodies are finished, we choose particular necks for particular bodies, put the neck on the body, and then it comes up through here. Generally, you can just tell which bodies and which necks want to go together. You've got some really beautiful necks, you've got some really beautiful bodies, you kind of want those together. Just your typical grain and your typical neck, you kind of fit those together, and then you want to paint those something special to accentuate the look of the guitar. You have to be familiar with the painting pattern and any certain particular grains. You want certain colors to go on. They put several layers of lacquer on there. They coat it 4 or 5 times. It comes out to being a good thick coat of lacquer, and then some of it, once it gets over into the buffing process, some of that buffs off to just the right thickness.
And buffing, they have an inspector there. After they get done with it, then they take a look at it, and then it's walked across the aisle to final assembly, which is where I work. And in final assembly, we have builders. Builders take the instrument, which has no pickups, tuning gears. They install the electronics, they put the hardware on it, and then they hand it off to the adjusters.
Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is cut the nut down and shape it to where the strings fit it right. Then I'm going to build the bridge. Then I'm going to add strings. And then I'm going to take this truss rod wrench and I'm going to straighten the neck. And I'm going to make sure the height of the strings is the way they're supposed to be. Tune it up and play it.
They have a very specific test that they want you to do. They want you to make sure that you hit every string and every fret. They want you to do 2 strings all the way up the neck for bend test. And then really you're supposed to put that thing down and get on to the next guitar. It is an assembly line after all. Things are going well and you're ahead of the number, then yeah, it's sort of time to play around a little bit.
Talking about musicians using a guitar as a tool, B.B. King, for example, who is also obviously with Lucille and these different guitars quite identified with this brand of guitar, he'd had a terrible time with feedback. There's stories of him stuffing socks and foam and all kinds of stuff into his guitars in an attempt to keep it from vibrating and keep it from feeding back. Well, once this came out, it kind of made it unnecessary to do that, and it became a great guitar for him. So by the time you get to say B.B. King live at the Regal, he's very much identified with his guitar and used it to a great extent, so much so that now Gibson has the Lucille.